You keep attracting the same person in a different body. The relationship begins with an intoxicating, almost supernatural chemistry, a feeling of destiny so potent you're convinced you finally, after all this time, found your soulmate. But then, the pattern repeats. The dream descends into a familiar nightmare of conflict, anxiety, and heartbreak, leaving you drained and asking a question that haunts the deepest part of your mind. Why does this keep happening to me? Why am I drawn to the very people who break me? You've searched for answers in pop psychology, in self-help books, in the diagnoses of others. You've called them toxic. You've called them narcissists. You've called it bad luck. But the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung would tell you, you're looking in the wrong place. He would tell you it isn't bad luck. It's a trap. And the most unsettling part? It's a trap set by your own soul. This isn't a story about finding the right person. This is the story of what can be called the Anima Trap, a powerful unconscious mechanism that ensnares you in cycles of painful relationships. But I will show you something more. I will show you that this trap, this repeating pattern of pain, is not a curse. It's a coded message from the deepest part of your psyche. It's a violent, desperate call to wholeness, and understanding this is the only way to break the cycle forever. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Thank you for your support. To understand the Anima Trap, we must first descend into the architecture of your own mind. Jung's map of the psyche is not simple. It is a living, breathing world. At the surface is the ego, the I you think you are, the center of your conscious awareness. The ego functions as the command center of your waking life, the manager of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. But its authority is profoundly limited, like a monarch who believes they rule the entire world, but is only aware of their own palace grounds. Below this lies the personal unconscious, a repository of your own forgotten memories, repressed experiences, and emotionally charged clusters of ideas Jung called complexes. These are the psychic knots tied by trauma or intense emotional experiences, like a father complex that makes you unconsciously seek approval from authority figures, or an inferiority complex that sabotages your every ambition. This is where most modern psychology stops. But Jung went deeper into a realm he called the collective unconscious. This is the bedrock of the psyche, a layer you do not acquire through life, but are born with. It is not personal, but transpersonal, a psychic primordial ocean from which all individual consciousness emerges. It is the shared psychic inheritance of all humanity, a blueprint of universal patterns, symbols, and instincts he termed archetypes. The mother, the hero, the trickster, the sage. These are not just stories told around a fire. They are the innate psychological software, the structural dominance of the psyche, that shape how you perceive and react to the world, organizing your experiences into recognizable patterns, long before your ego has a chance to analyze them. The power of the Anima Trap comes from this depth. It is not just your personal neurosis, not just a replay of your childhood wounds, though those wounds act as the trigger. The anima is an archetype. When you are caught in its grip, you are wrestling with a transpersonal, universal force that has animated human drama for millennia. This is why the attraction feels so magical, so fated, so much larger than you. Because it is. The problem isn't just personal, it's archetypal, and that makes it a profound spiritual challenge. Before you can face this force, however, you must pass what Jung called the apprentice piece of self-realization. You must meet your own shadow. The shadow is everything within you that you have rejected, disowned, and repressed. It is the repository of all the parts of yourself deemed unacceptable by your parents, your culture, your religion, and ultimately by your conscious ego. Jung wrote that, "There is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection." The formation of this psychic shadow is not a mistake, but a necessary consequence of building a functional personality. It is the psychic dumping ground for your aggression, your envy, your forbidden sexuality, and your perceived weaknesses. But the shadow is not just your darkness. It also contains your gold. It holds your repressed vitality, your creativity, your assertiveness, your raw life force. Qualities like healthy ambition might be cast into the shadow because your family considered it selfish, or your intuitive flashes might be repressed because your culture values only cold logic. To deny the shadow is to live an impoverished, anemic life, cut off from your own power and authenticity. You meet your shadow most often through projection. Jung famously said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." The arrogance in a colleague that infuriates you might be your own disowned confidence, which you were taught was unacceptably boastful. The laziness in a friend you despise might be your own repressed need for rest and non-productive being, a need you have judged as worthless. The manipulative political figure who incites your rage might be reflecting your own unacknowledged capacity to strategize and influence others, a power you fear in yourself. You project your shadow onto the world, and until you learn to withdraw those projections, to own those rejected parts as your own, you will remain a puppet to them, forever reacting to the world instead of acting within it. This is the first, non-negotiable step. Only after you begin the work of integrating your shadow can you approach the masterpiece of individuation, confronting the anima. The anima is the unconscious feminine archetype within the male psyche. Her counterpart in the female psyche is the animus. This work is the masterpiece because it requires integrating a contrasexual energy, an element that feels fundamentally other and can be far more destabilizing and powerful than the same-sex shadow. While her initial image is colored by your personal experience with your mother and other significant female figures, the anima, in her essence, is a transpersonal force. She is the archetype of life itself, the impersonal eros that connects all things. She holds the key to a man's capacity for relationship, for connection, for emotion, for creativity. She is his inner muse, his capacity for aesthetic appreciation, his connection to nature and the rhythms of the body. She is his bridge to the deepest parts of his own soul. An integrated anima manifests as empathy, vitality, profound connection to meaning, and a courageous openness to the unknown. But what happens when the anima is not integrated? What happens when a man rejects his own emotional life, his vulnerability, his own feminine side, casting it into the darkness of his shadow? He becomes what Jung called anima possessed. This is not a mystical haunting. It is a precise psychological state. The anima-possessed man is moody, irritable, and prone to childish emotional outbursts. His feelings, having been denied conscious expression, erupt in chaotic and inappropriate ways. overwhelming his ego. He is the captain of a ship whose command has been usurped by a tempestuous, unpredictable passenger. He is paralyzed by indecision and doubt, lost in a web of fantasy that prevents him from taking effective action in the real world. Yet, paradoxically, he is also prone to impulsive, ill-conceived actions, often of a sentimental or emotional nature. He either does nothing when he should, or he does the wrong thing without thinking. This internal state of possession inevitably spills outward into projection. The man, unable to connect with the feminine principle within himself, projects this powerful, idealized inner image of the anima onto a real woman. He doesn't fall in love with her, with her complexities, flaws, and unique personhood. He falls in love with his own soul image, now worn like a costume by an external person. She becomes a screen for his inner movie. This is the genesis of the Anima Trap. He is not seeking a partner. He is seeking a goddess, a savior, the magical other who he believes will complete him, heal his wounds, and make his life whole. This dynamic is directly linked to your earliest experiences. Your attachment style, formed in infancy, is the soil in which your anima grows. If your primary caregiver was unreliable, emotionally unavailable, or threatening, you develop an insecure attachment style. This is, at its core, a trauma response, a strategic adaptation to a dangerous environment. Anxious attachment, with its fear of abandonment and desperate need for reassurance, is a modern description of a man possessed by an unintegrated anima. He clings to his partner because he has not learned to hold himself, to self-soothe, or to find value from within. The intense highs and lows of the toxic relationship are not passion. They are a form of traumatic bonding, a biochemical addiction to a cycle of abuse and affection that mirrors the original wound from childhood. The intermittent reinforcement of affection and neglect creates a powerful neurochemical hook, an addictive cocktail of cortisol, dopamine, and oxytocin that feels like destiny, but is, in fact, a symptom of unresolved trauma. Your tendency to fall into the Anima Trap is a direct consequence of this unresolved attachment trauma. You are not choosing these partners out of free will. You are being compelled by an ancient wound to find someone who fits the broken lock of your childhood. A real human woman can never live up to the impossible standards of a projected goddess. She will have bad moods, selfish impulses, and differing opinions. When the fantasy bubble inevitably collides with the reality of her human flaws, the relationship enters a crisis. The idealization curdles into devaluation, the worship turn to blame. The goddess has revealed her humanity, and for the man caught in the trap, this feels like a profound betrayal. His ego, having staked its sense of wholeness on the perfection of the projection, cannot tolerate this cognitive dissonance. To protect itself from the feeling of foolishness and collapse, it must demonize the woman. It is not a betrayal by her. It is the collapse of his own projection, the death of his fantasy. This is why the cycle repeats. He isn't learning from the experience because he isn't having a real experience with a real person. He is having a relationship with his own unconscious. He will simply pick up his shattered soul image and project it onto the next person who remotely fits the archetype, someone whose energy, appearance, or initial behavior offers a hook for the projection, restarting the cycle of illusion and disillusionment. This ancient Jungian dynamic finds its most potent modern expression in the toxic dance between the so-called empath and the narcissist. The man possessed by his anima, projecting an idealized, divine feminine, offers the perfect, high-grade, narcissistic supply. He places the narcissistic partner on a pedestal, worshiping her, which feeds her fragile ego and deep inner emptiness. His adulation is pure and unconditional, precisely because it is not directed at a real person, but at a fantasy. The narcissist's classic technique of mirroring in the early stages of a relationship perfectly validates the projection. She becomes a psychic chameleon, studying his desires, his vulnerabilities, his unfulfilled longings, and then flawlessly performing them back to him. The man feels profoundly seen, understood, as if he's found his true other half, because the narcissist is flawlessly reflecting his own soul image back at him. This is not empathy. It is a predatory data-gathering exercise. The classic cycle of narcissistic abuse directly maps onto the collapse of the anima projection. First, the idealization phase, where the narcissist is love-bombing and the man is projecting his goddess fantasy. Second, the devaluation phase, as the narcissist's true nature emerges and she can no longer maintain the flawless mask. She begins to devalue her partner, to maintain control, and to discharge her own self-loathing. For the man, his goddess has shown her cracks, and the magic vanishes, replaced by confusion and pain. Finally, the discard phase. When the partner is no longer a perfect source of supply, the narcissist discards him, leaving him shattered. He mourns not just the loss of a person, but the catastrophic death of a divine fantasy, the collapse of his own projected soul. This is not a random pairing. It is a magnetic attraction of complementary shadows. The empath has often disowned his own healthy narcissism, his assertiveness, his personal power. He is drawn to the narcissist's grandiose confidence, unconsciously seeking to reconnect with this lost part of himself. The narcissist has disowned her own vulnerability, her authentic needs, her humanity. She is drawn to the empath's boundless capacity for care, which she both craves and despises. They are two broken halves of a whole, locked in a dance that can only lead to destruction. Understanding the mechanics of the trap is the map. Now begins the journey of escape. This is the hero's journey of individuation, and it requires courage and radical honesty. The first task is the apprentice piece. You must reclaim your shadow. The goal is to make the unconscious conscious, to withdraw your projections from others and integrate the rejected parts of yourself. This is practical, difficult work. Begin by hunting your projections. Pay close attention to the qualities in others that trigger a strong emotional reaction in you, whether it's irritation, envy, or intense admiration. That emotional charge is a signpost pointing directly to a disowned part of yourself. When you feel that charge, you have found gold. Ask yourself, where does this quality exist in me, in a repressed or undeveloped form? When was I taught that this part of me was wrong? This practice requires brutal self-honesty. Keep a shadow journal. Use prompts to excavate the disowned parts of yourself. What traits in others bother me the most? And when have I exhibited those same traits? What part of myself do I hide from the world, desperate for approval? What am I most ashamed of? What do I secretly envy in others? Write a letter to your inner child about the things that hurt him, the things he was told he should not be. You must look at the darkness you have hidden. The next task is the masterpiece, integrating the anima. This means withdrawing the projection from external partners and building a conscious internal relationship with this feminine principle. You must transform her from a destructive, possessing force into a creative, life-giving guide. Start by developing your inferior function. For a dominant thinking type who lives in logic and reason, the anima will attack through chaotic, undeveloped feeling. Integration means bravely engaging with this function, not in the external world, where you will be clumsy, but internally. This could mean engaging with art, poetry, or music that evokes powerful emotions, allowing yourself to be moved without immediately analyzing why. You must create a safe inner space to allow yourself to feel, no matter how irrational or childish it seems. This leads to a powerful strategy for emotional regulation. When you feel the anima attack, that wave of reactivity, jealousy, or moodiness, the instruction is to wait. Do not act. Do not send the angry text. Do not make the impulsive call. Sleep on it. Create a space between the stimulus and your response. This act of pausing is a heroic feat of consciousness, allowing your ego to step in and regain control from the possessed state. Conversely, when you find yourself lost in the anima's web of fantasy, paralyzed by indecision, the instruction is to act. Take one small, concrete step in the real world. Send the email, make the phone call, tidy your room, even if you're not sure it's the right one. This breaks the spell of sterile contemplation and grounds you back in reality, proving that your ego, not the unconscious fantasy, is in command. The most profound tool for this journey is what Jung called active imagination. This is not daydreaming. It is a conscious, focused dialogue with the figures of your unconscious. Find a quiet space, relax your mind, allow an inner image to arise. It could be a figure from a dream, a strong mood, or a physical sensation. Personify this energy. Give the anima a face, a voice. Then begin a dialogue. Ask her questions. What do you want from me? Why do you create this chaos in my life? Listen to her answers without judgment, allowing her to speak for herself, even if what she says is disturbing or nonsensical. You can do this mentally or by writing it down, like a script. Then you must give the experience a concrete form. Draw it, paint it, sculpt it, dance it. This makes it real and prevents self-deception, anchoring the psychic experience in the physical world. Finally, the most crucial step, the ethical confrontation. You must bring your conscious values into the dialogue. It is not enough to simply experience the unconscious. You must engage with it, make choices, take moral responsibility for the insights you gain. If the anima figure demands you abandon all responsibility, your conscious ego must negotiate. I hear your need for freedom, but I have obligations. Let us find a way to honor both. This dialogue creates a synthesis, a new way forward that belongs to neither the ego nor the unconscious alone, but to a newly forged whole self. This integrates the experience into your actual life, transforming you in the process. Jung described 4 stages of anima development, a symbolic map of a man's journey towards psychological maturity. The first stage is Eve, the biological, instinctual woman. Here, the man's relationship is based on need, dependency, and a projection of the mother. He cannot function without her care, and she exists primarily to satisfy his primal needs. The second is Helen of Troy, the aesthetic and romantic object of desire. This stage is about intense, idealized sexual attraction, but it is often superficial and possessive. The partner is an object of fantasy, a trophy to be won. The third is Mary, the spiritual ideal, the bearer of virtue. Here, the anima begins to function as an inner moral guide, and the relationship gains a spiritual dimension and capacity for true devotion and commitment. The final stage is Sophia, or wisdom. Here, the feminine principle is fully integrated. The anima is a guide to the soul, mediating between the conscious and the unconscious. A man at this stage can finally relate to a partner as a whole, unique individual, free from the crushing weight of projection. He sees her, and he is seen in return. The journey through the Anima Trap is a brutal, painful initiation. But it is. In the end, a call to awaken. It is a path from being an unconscious victim of your patterns to a conscious creator of your life. Love after projection is a different state of being. It is not a frantic search for a missing half, but a quiet meeting of two whole individuals who can finally see each other as they are. It is the shift from a transactional need to be completed to a generative desire to share one's fullness. As it has been said, if you are loved without projection, you are free. If you love without projection, you are real. The pain of your toxic relationships was never a sign of your failure. It was the urgent, desperate cry of your psyche calling you to the hero's journey of individuation. The trap itself was the key. The goal was never to find the perfect partner. The goal was always to become yourself.